Faster than a speeding bullet.
I ran until my muscles burned and my veins pumped battery acid.
More powerful than a locomotive.
An idea is like a virus. Resilient. Highly contagious.
Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound.
Hey guys, Jared Moon here, and welcome to the Better Humanology podcast. This week we have Dr. Anthony Gustin. Now, he was formerly a chiropractor. I guess he still is, and he actually grew his sports med-based chiropractic clinic to 6 locations, and he was even voted the best chiropractor in the Bay Area in 2014 and 2015. He's a CrossFit coach, a strength coach, and very passionate about nutrition. But we don't talk a lot about his clinics or chiropractic care or anything like that, because since he kind of shut that stuff down, he started some other companies. And the two namely that we cover are Perfect Keto, which is a supplement company, and then also formerly known as PureWOD, now called Equip Foods, something that I take on a regular basis. So Dr. Anthony Gustin was actually suggested to me by Dr. Ryan DeBell, who was also on the podcast, and I didn't know at the time that he was the founder of one of my favorite supplement companies. So I thought it'd be great to have him on, not just because I like his supplements, in the company that he's running, but you can tell he is so dedicated to being the best version of himself. He is juggling a lot of things. He's swinging for the fences and getting there most of the time. So it's awesome to hear about how he tackles his weeks, his days, his years, and really what the process is behind operating at such a high level. So without any further ado, let's hear from Dr. Anthony Gustin. All right, Dr. Gustin, I'm super pumped to have you on the Better Humanology podcast, man. Thanks for joining me.
Appreciate it, buddy.
So let's get started right away with some challenges and a recommendation, if you don't mind. How about a fitness challenge for everybody listening?
A fitness challenge, yeah. So I'm going to give a fitness challenge of something I'm working on right now, which is 30-second freestanding handstand, which is brutal. So I get all these people always asking me what they should do for fitness or whatever, who can lift a tons of weight but can't control their own body weight. And so that's been super challenging for me. So I'm going to pass that challenge on to somebody else.
Awesome. And where are you at? Like 20 seconds, 10 seconds? Where
15 to 20. 15 and 20.
Nice, man. That's admirable. That's one of the most challenging holds you can do.
Brutal.
All right. How about a mental toughness challenge?
I would say meditate for 30 days in a row. Consistency with that is key, in my opinion. So I would say 30 days is minimum for people to really get into a groove and notice the benefits. So 30 days in a row, meditate 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever. Use it Headspace or something like that if you need to, but that would be a mental toughness challenge that I like to throw out there.
And do you meditate regularly?
Yep. Yeah, I just do free form at this point. I did a Headspace for a long time, but I just set a timer just so I can track how long I'm going for, and then I just go into it, and then whenever I come out of it, I do, and so it's anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes per day.
Awesome. All right, and then last one, a book recommendation. Either something you're currently reading that you thought was good, or maybe a book that you have that really impacted your life at some point.
Yeah, I just finished up Principles by Ray Dalio, which I think to build better mental models and how you approach things and create systems is really, really awesome. So Principles by Ray Dalio. Awesome.
That's actually 2 down on my wish list to start next. That's great. And you enjoyed the book?
Yeah, it was great.
Okay, awesome, man. I'm going to have to check that out. All right, dude. So let's dive in a little bit here now, if you don't mind giving an introduction, a little background on yourself, where everybody else who doesn't know who you are can get caught up.
Yeah, so I'm trained as a chiropractor. I graduated 5 years ago. I am no longer doing that. I think it was about 14 months now since I sold my clinics. I had 6 locations here in the Bay Area in San Francisco where I'm based. So it's been a wild ride since then. I've been into health and fitness kind of my whole life, and got out of school 5 years ago and was doing more sports medicine and treating musculoskeletal injuries. Switched that after about 3 years to do more so functional medicine. Figured out the root cause of most stuff was actually nutrition, whether that was recovering from a musculoskeletal injury like a strain or a sprain, or fixing a gut issue. What you needed was proper nutrition to actually become a better human and to heal those ailments. And so I was thinking about, where I was at in my career, and I actually sat down with a notebook and did the math of how many people I would impact doing like a private practice, even if it was scaled to 20 clinics. And the number was actually pretty troubling to me over the course of my life, what impact I would have. Not to mention just the area. Okay, I could maybe expand in Northern California a little bit, and if I was lucky and did this massive like nationwide thing, it would still be very limiting. And so I kind of brainstormed a little bit about how to create scalable change in nutrition. And so I noticed that it wasn't necessarily about knowledge at the point where I was putting out some blog posts and getting a little bit of an audience. It was actually about accessibility and consistency. And so with that, what I launched was first a product called PureWOD. It's now called Equip Foods, but what that is whole food products where people were able to get beef isolate protein powder, sweet potato powder, and substitute these areas where they're looking at getting junk in their diet and putting in something that's whole food based. Always eating or consuming whole foods is going to be better than not, in my opinion. And so transitioning people to that and having them clean up their diets while educating them on the back end of why it's important to have whole food nutrition was a super scalable approach. And so that grew, I think, a little over 2 years when I started that. And so that took off really quickly. And as I switched to that, I went out of private practice, and since then have launched a few different companies kind of in a similar space. And so another therapy that I was using with people was a ketogenic diet. And so that's the main focus right now. It's a company called Perfect Keto. And so I'm running that primarily day to day, but also Equip Foods, my own personal site. And then with someone I think you've had on the show before, Dr. Ryan DeBell, I'm going to have a few different projects. One's called Movement Providers to help people find clinicians like how we were practicing earlier, as well as Health Fit Business, which is pretty much to help other clinicians and people who are health experts transition out of their own kind of day-to-day practice into a more scalable approach, just like him and I both have. So that's kind of in a nutshell what's been going on the last few years. Pretty crazy. I've always been kind of like pushing on the edge, seeing where I could take things. And there's no way even a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago to ever anticipate my life looking like how it does now, which is a little bit of a madhouse, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. And you're definitely juggling a lot. And
oh yeah,
Ryan, Dr. DeBell did recommend you being on the podcast, and I didn't know at the time. I knew that he mentioned that you guys are running Health Fit Biz, that the podcast and the site, and I was like, oh, okay, that's really awesome. But what I didn't know is I'd been taking your supplement for like a year.
Which one?
Equip. Formerly PureWOD. I'd been taking PureWOD, basically all of them. The beef protein isolate, the greens, and the sweet potato powder. Taking
that's why
it
you're
all.
Such a beast, man.
Yeah, and that's, to be honest, I'd love for anyone listening to go buy your products, because what I did this was last year and into the previous year, I took on a challenge to do Murph every single Saturday for a year, and it was just a personal challenge. But that was, PureWOD at that time was kind of the unofficial sponsor. That was the supplements I was taking during that entire time, and I've just continued. You guys switched to Equip, and I still take it every morning, and dude, just absolutely love it. So what happened to, you kind of mentioned nutrition being the reason, that was healing people, was the real issue there. But I mean, how did you get into the nitty gritty of a supplement company? That's not an easy transition, even if you realize the big picture is nutrition, health, food. You transitioned from running a practice to a supplement business. How was that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a struggle. I'm the first one to admit that I'm typically don't ever know what the hell I'm doing. So I still feel that way. And I feel like if you ever feel like you know what you're doing and you feel comfortable, that's when you've lost. That complacency is where people are generally just slowing growth and not learning anything new. So, I mean, it's the terrifying nature of not knowing what I'm doing is actually increasing exponentially, which I don't know when that stops. But yeah, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I still feel like I don't. Like I feel like I have, from what I've learned, like I can look backwards and be like, oh, it's so obvious now. But where I'm at now, I think it's to a point now we have 20 employees. I don't know what the hell I'm doing managing a company that does tens of thousands of shipments a month that has 20 employees. Like I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So I don't think that process ever stops, but it's about always looking for answers and solving problems in creative ways, and always being open to learn and learn quickly, and getting the feedback of, okay, this is what we did for a marketing push. This is what we did for a product. What were the results and what can we learn from that? And then taking that as a learning approach and just refining it and not caring if you were right or you were wrong, but just learning quickly and moving forward, I think is the biggest thing. People get hung up on like, oh no, I failed. Like I didn't do this right. I must be a bad person or I must not be smart. It's not about that. It's about learning quickly and moving forward. And so, yeah, I mean, it was a huge shift. It's also a huge identity shift going from a clinician working with people really deep one-on-one to kind of switching that into a company that ultimately had to become hands-off with the customers to have it grow to the point it is now. And so that was really hard. I mean, I knew on a day-to-day basis who I was helping, how I was helping them, how they were getting better. And now it's kind of like this black box where people are in that and getting help, but I don't have the individual feedback. I mean, I get it with emails and people reaching out on social media all the time, which is fantastic. But that identity shift from, okay, I've trained 8+, 10+ years of my life to be this certain person that now I'm not, and now I'm doing something completely different, it was a huge struggle for a long period of time. I think that was actually a good lesson in my life, that stripping away identity and always looking at, points of where you are identifying yourself and taking that apart and questioning why is always a good chance to move forward. And so, I mean, that comes from nutrition. I went from kind of a paleo background and thought, okay, I'm identifying with myself with somebody who is quote unquote paleo, but why the hell am I doing this? And like, what is the reason for this? And instead of having these rigid rules in place, moving forward from that and building, a point of stability in my life based upon nutrition that works for me and not necessarily what works for everybody else. Ended a very serious relationship in the last couple months. And like, that was a point of me to like, I identified with somebody who was in a relationship that looked like this. Like, is that healthy moving forward, or was I just compensating in certain ways? And these are the things that, lessons learned from starting a company and switching from being a chiropractor to owning and running supplement companies and these other companies is like, I mean, you can always change, and the window's always open to do that, but it's up to you to look yourself in the face and realize that you typically don't know what you're doing and you don't know where you're going to go, and being comfortable with that, I think, is the biggest lesson that I've learned. So long answer to a short question, but
no, man, I appreciate it. I'm getting a lot out of this, and sounds like, self-awareness is a very big part of what keeps you going forward. Never just like, well, this is what I'm doing now. You kind of always take a step back to really analyze and view yourself from the outside to see if this is what you should be doing, who you are, and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, you have no idea. So Ryan will be the first to tell you that I'm a little bit of a psychopath when it comes to that. Like, I have this crazy sheet where I track every day the things I'm doing that plug into this monthly review process that I do that plugs into this yearly kind of goal matrix that I have. Everything is tracked like in a very, very specific way, just to ensure that I'm going the direction that I intend on, from like a micro all the way to a macro level. So yeah, I mean, it's something that's super important to me. And I've just noticed, like, I just did a review of all of my notebooks. So I take a lot of notes throughout the day, do a lot of journaling and stuff like this. And I just reviewed everything for 2017 as we're closing out the year. And the times where I'm tightest on that and the self-tracking and self-awareness are always the times that are best in my life, whether from a personal or business standpoint. So it may not work for other people, but it works for me.
No, I think I just got a new best friend, man. That is exactly like I live my life very, very similarly. And I know, so I just moved recently. Been a month or two now, and my life got like really crazy. Just trying to juggle business and moving and all of these things that were going on. And so a lot of what I do on a daily basis kind of dropped off. And, to some degree, like my workouts weren't as good or as frequent. And, I wasn't as disciplined with some of my habits and routines that I'm into, and journaling is a big part of that. And really that month that I moved was like one of the worst months, from a lot of different standpoints, but also just the way I felt about myself and, my motivation level and everything, is when everything was like all loose and scattered. I was like, this is not good. This is not who I am. And so I like doubled it down that next month to a lot, like you're saying, tracking and getting back to who I feel like I truly am. And now everything, feels great.
Right. I think it's the constant awareness of where you are in that path and the direction you're heading is the most important part. For instance, I like in my weekly tracker and my daily tracker, it gives me a score. So I have all these things that I want to measure on a day-to-day basis. 2 major projects. I want to write a certain amount of articles per week. I want to read a certain amount of books. I want to meditate. I want to work out. I want to move well. And so based upon those things, I get a score from the week, and that's either a red, yellow, or green. And I have all this stuff like pre-populated in the sheet. And I don't beat myself up if it's a red week. I just ask myself at that point, oh shit, here's what happened. I'm not going the direction that I want to be from places where I know I want to go. What happened there, and what can I do next week to fix those things? And then maybe the next week is a yellow and not a green. And that's completely fine too, but at least I'm trending in the right direction. And then that way you can steer the ship a little bit differently. But like if you're sailing this giant cruiser throughout the ocean and you're just slowly getting off track, well, I mean, good luck in 6 months. And that's what a lot of people don't do is keep this trend line of where they're heading. I think that's the most important part, and not blaming yourself. Like, it's very easy to get off track. And I mean, life changes and there's a lot of major shit that can go on. But I mean, keeping it just a constant awareness of, am I heading in the right direction based upon kind of an overview of where I want to be? I think that's the most important part.
So where did this come from? This tracking and this linear, shot you have at the ultimate future that you want to achieve, and reviewing that on a daily basis or weekly basis. Where did this come from?
Yeah. So, I mean, just look at all the stuff that I told you I was trying to manage right now. I think it's just a function of trying to do so much stuff at once. I really need to have an organized lifestyle. My personality type is INTJ. So I don't know how many Myers-Briggs type of people are out there, but
yeah.
That means I'm essentially like a very, very, very structured and organized and, like I said, psychopath when it comes to this type of stuff, which is just my personality type. And knowing that, and then I just feel better when I have stuff to track like that is a good place for me to go. And it didn't just start like this. This has been an evolution over the last like 3 or 4 years of just always looking to improve and get better at things so that I can have more of an impact and spread what I've learned over the years to help other people as well.
That's great. And then is this like an internal, like, do you use I know you have the daily Domination journal. Is this part of that process, or do you have like additional things that you use to track all of this?
Yeah, so we actually just got the version 2.0 in this last week that I've been using the last couple of days. And so that's kind of a hybrid. That's one of the things I write in on a day-to-day basis. I might just publish this next year. So every year I go through and make a new spreadsheet and then fill it on out. I don't think it's worth looking at goals over a year. Even throughout the course of this year, like, stuff has changed so dramatically that there's no way I would have anticipated my life right now. So I think shooting past a year is pretty ridiculous. I think people were like, that's fine if you want to have 5-10 year goals. But I think what happens at that point is you really underestimate what you can do in a year. And so I only set a year expectation. And so I usually go on these retreats like once a year. So actually, Ryan and I and a few friends are going to Europe. So we're going to Amsterdam, Lisbon, and Paris. And we're going to be going over these exercises all together and coming up with strategies we can do to help keep each other on an external accountability plan. But what we do is essentially look at, okay, from personal fitness, personal health, business-wise, all this different stuff, what are the things that I want to get better at? And what are the things that are truly meaningful to me based upon last year and where I was and where I've been, and then based upon this year and where I want to go? And setting them so only about we're 11 days out, 12 days out from the end of the year, and I'm only going to hit at about 70% of my goals that I set last year. And I think that that's appropriate because that sets a point where you're not hitting all your goals. And I think that if you do that, you're setting your bar too low. And if you're reaching everything you accomplished, then I don't think you're being aggressive enough. And I think that if you're only hitting like 50%, then I think you're setting them too damn hard and you're too hard on yourself. So I think that anywhere between like the 65 to 80% range of success on goals is, I think, where you should be. And so now I'm going to take my sheet from last year and say, okay, these are the things that I did or did not get done. What was actually meaningful and what's meaningful to me now? Do I want to carry some of those over? Do I want to modify them in any significant ways? And how close was I? And like, why did I do these things? And like, just take a good 5, 7, 8 days off from any type of work to be able to actually brew on these things and think about what's important in the next year. And then from that, it kind of strips down. So like, let's say it's, okay, so I'm publishing a book next year. And So let's say I'll put like, okay, I want to sell 50,000 copies of this book. So if it launches in April, here's everything I need to do on a month-to-month basis from like April to December to get that done. And like, what are the things that I can do from that, like on a month-to-month basis? And then every month I will look at those goals and where I'm at and how I'm progressing in, the same scoring system of red, yellow, or green. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
no,
yeah, that's kind of like the year to month to week recap.
No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I used to, when I first went full-time entrepreneur, I did always set these really lofty stretch goals, and I would almost never meet them. And but I was doing what you said. I would get like whatever 60-70% of the way there, but I would still beat myself up, even though it was significant progress from where I was. And so it's been a learning process for me to basically what you said. It's like, hey, you didn't meet that goal, but it was a ridiculous goal in the first place, but you got a good portion of the way there. So like, still relax and celebrate. That I think that's a really good point for a lot of people, even in like breaking it down from business all the way to your personal health. If it's a weight loss goal or performance goal or whatever, make it challenging and don't beat yourself up if you didn't get there all the way.
Right. And some of the goals too, it's like, okay, I had certain goals for Equip or PureWOD where it used to be, and certain goals for Perfect Keto. And the Perfect Keto ones were just blown out of the freaking water. Whereas the Equip ones were like, some of them are met, some of them are not met. And I look at this and go, okay, so if I just look at reds or greens here, it looks like I'm not meeting any goals from Equip, and then I just met goals from Perfect Keto. But like, if you actually look at the magnitude of how those goals were crushed, it's pretty significant. And so that's another thing you have to realize is like, if you didn't reach some goals, was it at the actual expense of other goals being so absolutely insane that like it was a good sacrifice to make? You know what I mean? And so I don't think it's just like, did I do this? Did I not do that? I think you have to realize like, okay, there's an opportunity cost to not doing certain things. And sometimes it's a better investment of your time or energy. And it's not just like it's a binary thing of did I do this or did I not do this?
All right, let's talk about Perfect Keto a little bit. I have actually had one canister of, I think it was the sea salt and chocolate, BHB. Really good stuff. And I do recommend that one as well. But what kind of started you down that path?
Yeah. So again, like I was saying, ketogenic diet was an approach that I was using for a lot of my patients, whether that's for boosting mental performance for people in the Bay Area, a lot of entrepreneurs and kind of biohacker type people here, or if it's diabetes management, weight loss management, cancer management, there's just a lot of applications for it. Yeah. When I was doing it, it was really tough for people to adhere to a certain type of ketogenic lifestyle because there's not a lot of products that are out there. And for them to experience that, it's like it can be a little tough transition period to go from high carb diet to a low carb diet. And so the exogenous ketones were the first product. There was nothing really like this. There was two products at the time. One tasted awful, and the other one was $250 for 12 servings, I think, which is just insane. Like that, you're not making nutrition or health accessible when you do that and make a pyramid scheme out of a company, which is what this other company was. It's like you're not helping anyone but yourself. And so I felt obligated at that point to launch this product line to actually make ketosis a more accessible state of metabolism. And so with that, we've obviously launched way more products and really focus on education, because this is another big thing too. Is like there's so many misconceptions about it, and as the space is growing so fast, I felt an obligation to insert myself and have a company in the space where people can actually trust the information being put out. And so when stuff like this comes up and there's a potential for weight loss, you're going to get so many goddamn charlatans that come out and say, oh no, this is a weight loss supplement and blah, 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 and sell it based upon that and not actually give people the true information and what they need and the work they need to put in to actually make themselves healthy. And I think it's a real shame. And so this is one of the things too that we've tried to stay ahead of those type of people and build a brand around this to actually serve people the information that they need. And so that they realize that, okay, just because you have high level of ketones doesn't mean you're a healthy person. So you need to look at food quality, you need to look at sleep, you need to look at stress, you need to look at movement. And these are all factors that play into your health, not just a state of ketosis. And so having a brand like this that's growing rapidly in the space and moving really quickly, I think is a way for me to help shine a light on what you actually need to do for health instead of just selling it as a quick fix weight loss supplement, which everybody else is trying to do.
Yeah, and that's I've seen a lot of that going down with, and keto just by
Terrible.
itself is, let's just say, exploding. In popularity, it has been over the last, I don't know, for my standpoint, year and a half, maybe longer, but it's just getting more and more popular. And there are a lot of, oils and other BHB supplements and things coming out with. I've just seen some of the outrageous claims and the low quality, and so when you, I had already been taking PureWOD and then Equip, and so when I saw that you had Perfect Keto, I was, on board because I know that you like to put out high quality supplements. And then I also saw a huge increase in, my cognitive abilities. And so I was wondering if you could talk about, I mean, we don't have to get too scientific at all, but from that standpoint, say you don't want to lose weight, or that's not the reason you're doing it. You mentioned living in the Bay Area, a lot of people wanting to improve that cognitive performance. Can you talk about how that works, or how someone should, if that was their main goal, how they should probably approach taking your supplement, tailored with or coupled with a lifestyle and diet approach?
Right. So I think always food quality matters first. And so if you're not eating real food, then don't bother taking any supplements. Supplements are called supplements for a reason. They're not replacements. And so if you're not eating real food, start there 100%. After that point, though, so like you said, the first product we launch is what's called an exogenous ketone. So ketone molecule is just basically the breakdown of fat, and it's what your body runs on in the absence of carbohydrate. And so your body says, okay, there's not any carbohydrate or glucose around in the bloodstream. We need an alternative fuel source. Let's start breaking down this stored energy we have called fat into ketones. And so that ketone molecule that your body uses is called beta-hydroxybutyrate. And so they recently just started being able to make this as an ingredient, as an exogenous ketone. So endogenous just means that your body is creating it. And so an exogenous ketone is beta-hydroxybutyrate that you can take in, and your body can use energy without having to break down the fat for that energy. That does not mean that you can't lose fat if you take an exogenous ketone. It's just this ridiculous myth. That's like saying if you eat food, you can't lose fat. And so we all know that that's false. So the brain and the heart specifically, even in the presence of carbohydrates, when there's beta-hydroxybutyrate or ketones in the bloodstream, will preferentially uptake that as an energy substrate. And it's a much more efficient energy substrate than a glucose molecule. And so especially crossing blood-brain barrier and getting into the brain, glucose molecule is a little bit bigger, and as well as the metabolism you need and the oxygen you need for that to produce energy is much more demanding, and it takes much more to process that. There's much more waste product. And so having a beta-hydroxybutyrate in the brain, even if you have carbs in your bloodstream, will be uptaken, and you will produce more energy with less oxygen demand, with less byproducts that are resultant of the process of actually using that as an energy substrate. And so basically it's like a cleaner burning fuel. And so people notice that, I mean, I'm just rattling stuff off. Like when I'm like this, like I take exogenous ketones every morning at like 6, 7 a.m. and I don't eat usually until about 1 to 2 p.m. And so like my body, and I'm in ketosis most of the time anyway, but I notice for me, like the ability for me to like have a conversation like this and just rattle stuff off constantly is not how it would be like if I just had a bagel, especially.
Yeah.
Be like, yeah. It's just a different state of mental energy that's way more consistent, and I can do that from 6 a.m. to when I eat or when I work out. Like it's pretty remarkable actually. And it's one of these things that you just have to experience for yourself, and everyone reacts to it a little bit differently. I can't myself get to the point I want just eating a ketogenic diet. And so even if I'm eating no carbohydrates, I only get, like if I measure in my blood level of ketones, it's called amount of millimolar, like a 1.2, 1.5, but I feel best about 3.0. I can't get there without using my products. And so that's not just a plug for my product, that some people, just males especially, have a harder time getting higher levels. However, you might feel best at that higher level mentally, and that's something that you just need to test personally. I mean, one of my employees is not taking any of the products. So he just likes to do things with real food, which I support. And he gets up to 3.0, 4.0 easily. And so it just depends per person. He said he felt like he was taking speed or like Adderall when he was on a ketogenic diet. He's like, this is incredible. I feel like I'm on drugs most of the time, like in a good way, like not not a damaging way. So like, yeah, everyone reacts differently, but I think that for anyone, they can, like, you don't have to just be looking to lose weight. Like the reduction in inflammation and the increase in mental performance. Like Ryan doesn't eat, for instance, he doesn't eat a ketogenic diet. Like he's a big dude and he does a lot of explosive workouts, so he eats a lot of carbohydrates, but he uses exogenous ketones all the time. Same reason, for like a nootropic effect and for a mental performance boost. I think there's a lot of different applications than just fat loss or losing weight or even like endurance performance.
And do you recommend it be taken how you take it in a fasted state before? It sounded like you take it fasted and then you don't eat until the afternoon.
Well, it just depends. I like not eating for a while. I'm just generally not hungry when I wake up. And so, I mean, that's just, people can have it. Like a lot of people put in the butter coffee, bulletproof coffee type of stuff. Or you can have, like Ryan has it with food, right? If he doesn't eat in like 15 minutes, he freaks out. He was actually at my office last week, and everyone there kind of does this like intermittent fasting and it is pretty keto. So we don't really eat that often or like, until later in the day. And I think it was like 10 a.m. and he stands up at one of his desks and like slams his hands on the table and goes, "God damn it. Why doesn't anybody eat here?" And just stormed out and went to lunch. So yeah, I mean, you can still use it if you're eating. And I think that is still helpful. And it, like, basically whenever you want your brain and your body to have more energy is when you can use it. It doesn't have to be any certain way. And that's where people get like hung up. They want a very specific cookie cutter approach to things. And so we have this big Facebook group where we help a lot of people out, but everybody wants this specific approach. It's one of these things like you have like, I don't know your goals as a human being. I don't know your metabolic history. I don't know what you've been eating or how you feel after certain things. Everyone's going to respond super differently. Everyone's going to have different goals. And so that's one of the things that people just have to play around with. You can use it with basically however you want, like before workout, after workout, during a workout, on an empty stomach, on a full stomach, before bed, when you wake up. It's just however it fits with your goals and however you feel after you take it. I mean, it's one of these things where running on energy systems is a little bit unique to each individual. So you just got to test.
And are there any drawbacks to taking?
Yeah, if you haven't taken this step before and you haven't been in the state of ketosis, you're not going to have a lot of cellular receptors that can take up the ketones. And so what happens is, like, let's say you take a couple scoops at a time and your body's not used to using beta-hydroxybutyrate as an energy source, then your body will say, okay, what the hell is this stuff? Let's flush it out. And you get diarrhea. And that's common if people take too much of the outset. But if that happens, just reduce the amount you're taking. And the same thing happens with MCT oil, and for the same reason, because it doesn't have to go through the liver for digestion. You can just absorb it immediately. And so same thing happens with too much MCT oil that people call disaster pants or whatever. And so if that's the case, just reduce the amount and let your body become accustomed to using this as an energy source, and then start ramping it up after that.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you kind of breaking that down. Now I want to shift back to just you as a human being, because I know I haven't actually asked the question, but I'm assuming that you have a common belief, like a lot of us do who listen to the podcast, that your business is only going to be as, or your life is only going to be as good as you are in improving, right? Like you have to constantly be getting better, learning more to be able to improve in all these different areas of your life. So I'm sure that's a habit, or else you wouldn't be as successful you are in all these different areas. But what does a day look like in your life? Or are they pretty same structured or different every day, every week? What can you break down a day for me?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's a little chaotic. I just moved in San Francisco. I'm probably going to move soon out of San Francisco, but also kind of stay here. Like I said, I just ended a major relationship. I'm starting a major relationship. My career has changed basically 7 times this year with how the company has grown. So my days are a little wild, but the routine of start and end of day is pretty similar. And I think that keeps me grounded no matter what. My expectations also on a day-to-day basis just change wildly, just because there's so many different projects I'm doing that the middle, like part of my day as a sandwich, always is different. And so like today I'm recording, I think, 5 podcasts. So it's podcast day. Didn't plan it that way, but it just ended up that way. So, I mean, I like to batch tasks as much as possible. Mondays are always meetings with my staff and with my team. And so we do a lot of one-on-ones those days. I try to keep Wednesdays for in-person meetings, Thursdays for kind of like catch up in marketing and product development, and then Friday just as kind of whatever was left over. That can change week to week just based upon whatever happens. But the most important thing I think is having consistency at the beginning and the end of the day, and having that routine there. Like no matter what, I can do that, and that is something that like keeps me sane. So also have been traveling the last 4 months like a madman, and so as long as I have the morning look like essentially, I call it 3 M's. And so it's move. So I get up and like get out of bed and just start moving around a little bit. And so I get some blood flow. So I do like 10 to 15 minutes of gymnastics work. And so it could be handstand work. It could be just planche work or whatever. Just 10 to 15 minutes of just getting some blood flow, and then meditate. So that's the same thing I talked about earlier. So just set the clock and then just go to kind of freeform meditation. And then after that is make. And so it's create something before, I like to get up before the people get up. So that way I'm not getting bombarded with emails. Also before the sun's up is usually when I like to be up. But that's, if that's, I play a lot of music and instruments. So if it's that, if it's writing a blog post, if it's, I just finished this book. So it was that every single day. It's just something that's creative that, is not like work based, usually feels way better than if it is. And that just sets my brain like in a good state to like dive into hard projects. And so typically like if I have time, if I'm not traveling and things are crazy, then I go from that to tackling 1 or 2 projects of the day. So I always have 2 big projects I want to get done in any given day, regardless of if it's a podcast day or a meeting day. Because I think like always tackling 2 big things in a day is, well, like, okay, that's 700 things in a year. That's a lot of stuff that if you don't put those things down, you can brush off a lot of things and look back 3 weeks later and realize that you really didn't get anything done besides task work. And so it's usually one of those things. And then let's say meetings or whatever, and then workout. And then after a workout, I try to get back to do another one of those big projects, and then back to doing whatever that mode of the day was. Then at nighttime, it's kind of the opposite thing where I have to call it 3 R's. And so it's just rest where like I'm not trying, like I try to set a cutoff point where I'm not going to work past a certain time. So that may vary per day or where my routine is. But like for me right now, it's like 8 p.m. Like after 8 p.m., I'm like, I got to shut my computer. I got to not do any work because I'm the type of person, since I can work from wherever, I will work from wherever. And so shut my computer, it's off. I'm either engaging with the people I'm around 100%. Or reading or doing whatever. So rest is just that. Like I'm not working past a certain point. Otherwise, I'll just stay up all night and work. And then read. And so that just includes. So that's usually just whenever I get into bed to whenever I fall asleep. And then also recap. So before I start reading, I usually just look at the day and how it went, and if there's anything that I could have done better. And so at that point, I can catch some things of like, oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. I can improve tomorrow based upon this information. Or today was really great, and I'm really grateful that these things happened. I think that that's a good habit to get into as well. So that's kind of like the bookends of my day don't really change much. I think that even if things get crazy, and even if I'm traveling a bunch, or like have all these major life changes, I still have that consistency where I can hang my hat on and know, okay, I know how my day is going to start. I know how my day is going to end in these very productive ways that I know have shown for me to like stay on track. I think that goes a long way to kind of like quell the craziness in between.
You sound like you are a relentless creator and very driven individual. What keeps you going? Why are you so driven?
I don't know. It's get bored easily, man.
So you just got to keep the wheels turning, huh?
No, like I said before, I just have this just awareness, and I learned this kind of at an early age, that if you're comfortable with how things are, it means things are not going well. And that's just like who I am and what I believe entirely. And so like I like to shake things up. And so if I feel like I'm just getting in a routine and like things are status quo, no, something's wrong for me. Like if I'm not uncomfortable, I'm uncomfortable. That makes sense?
That makes perfect sense. I think that we have a lot in common. I just normally like to see what pushes people's buttons and where they're coming from, why they're doing what they're doing. And it's really awesome to hear your kind of perspective on things. And one thing I want to talk about that just kind of came up, because you said your team, I don't know if it was just Equip now or all companies combined. You said you're leading 20 people. Is that correct? How have you found transitioning to this? I mean, 20 people, that's a pretty big leadership role for most anyone. How have you found that transition to being a leader in your company?
Brutal, man. Hard. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So I'm just trying to learn really fast. And it's at the stage now where I'm now at least one person removed from the details. So I'm a very detail-oriented person. I used to be doing every detail myself, and then I started delegating those things, and now I'm delegating those things to people who are delegating things. And so now we're getting a layer removed from the actual details is very tough for me. And so that has been a huge struggle point in the last couple months, especially. But there's no way we can grow otherwise. I can't be the bottleneck managing all the little details and everything. So I have to trust people and get people who are better at things than me, which it's not hard to find those people, but getting people who are better than me at the things that I want to hire for. So like we just brought on just incredible content manager who like she's just crushing everything and has so many better ideas than I am. And so it's like at this point now, like it was initially finding people to delegate anything to, and then it was getting people better than that, and now it's getting people. So like getting people better than that who I could delegate things to and teach what I kind of perfected, and then now it's finding people who are better than me at all the things that I've been delegating. And so that has been a really good strategy. But finding good people is hard. And so that has been the biggest thing is like finding these departments in areas where we're doing a good job, but I know we could be doing better. And then getting people who can teach me stuff. And then I can like have this type of managerial team that now is delegating to other people. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what I'm doing, man. I haven't done this before. So if you have any tips, let me know. But yeah, it's a challenge. And so I think that's one of these things where as stuff grows, I mean, from a 0 person company, it was easy in my opinion now. And then, one, a couple of people, like it was like, oh man, this is kind of getting real. And then, 2 to 10 is a thing. And then now like we're at 20, it's a lot to manage, man. It's definitely in real, like large business mode at this point, which was not even what I was intending or expecting or even knew was a possibility a year or 2 years ago. And so, like I said, just being open for change and being aware that I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just trying to learn as fast as possible is big. I think it's tough too, like with how fast things are changing. That I haven't really been able to get my feet set at any certain point because things are changing so fast. And so I just hope that I'm not messing up anything critical as we move forward, but doing what I can, man. Yeah,
and that's that dynamic environment that you're in, I think adds a completely different challenge to all of it, because I was pre doing all that I'm doing now. I was an officer in the military, and yeah, I got to manage teams of 20, 30, 40 people, and that was one thing. And now, I kind of went from that to being solopreneur to one extra person on my team to 2 extra people on my team and so on. And it's been almost equally as challenging, even at the smaller scale, just because of that dynamic environment that you're talking about. In the military, things are a little more structured, and you can set up these long strategic goals and keep everyone on track. And there's just a lot more, I guess, rungs to put your hand on, and it is very different in the entrepreneurship world. And I wanted to ask you, aside from leadership, what would you say your biggest challenge has been in either Equip or Perfect Keto, just in running these companies?
It's a good question. I think everything's a challenge. I don't think there's anything. I think the biggest challenge is just finding good people. Like I said, I think that at this point, especially finding really good people who are bought into the mission of the so I don't ever hire people who aren't super bought into what we're trying to do. Like we've had a chance to hire skilled people who would be really, really good at operations or content or whatever. But at a certain point, like if they don't believe in what I'm trying to do and what the whole team is trying to do, then it doesn't matter. And like the culture is ruined. And so I think that finding people who care about health and nutrition and helping other people who are also really good at what they do is super hard. I think that's been the biggest challenge. So I guess recruiting new people. So if anyone's out there listening to this and thinks they have something to offer, please reach out to me.
Yeah. I think that's a great place to do it. Finding most everyone who works for me now or who wants to work for me, you know, they'll always be pulled from our audience. They've done our training. They know the mission, they know what we're doing. And that's something I actually want to talk to you about was, so I set a mission for our company to help build 10,000 better humans, which I know is kind of in line with your, I was just looking at it recently, the Health Fit Biz podcast and website that you and Ryan are running, right?
10 on 10,000, baby.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool. So can you talk to me about that concept a little bit?
Well, I mean, I think it's just seeing things from a service provider standpoint. It gets super easy to look at your schedule on a day-to-day basis and think, oh, I have 10 people today. Today's a crazy day. When I was saying before, I did the math on who we're going to impact, and you can't even fathom 10,000 people when you're a service provider. And so whether that's owning a gym or being a personal trainer, being a nutrition coach, being a chiropractor, MD, it doesn't matter. Like if you're in a service profession, like you just literally can't have that much impact. Like you can go deep, and I think that's great. I think that's necessary. But I think be able to have the impact and think a little bit differently, like you have to solve problems in a different way. And so that's what Ryan and I, as we've transitioned, so he does kind of a similar thing, more so based upon movement. I'm sure people can look up his podcast in the show notes. I'm sure you put it in there. But I mean, he's trying to do the same thing. Like we're trying to fix these problems at scale. And like you can't do that in a service-based way. And so looking at it from, okay, am I impacting 10 people with this decision or 10,000 people? It's kind of an ethos that we've created and tried to spread a little bit, which is just thinking about your impact and how you could actually scale what you're trying to change.
I think that's very admirable. Like I said, that's something I'm doing. What we actually do is people always ask how I'm tracking that. And inside of our members area, we just have a little button to take a survey. And because it's not customers, it's not email subscribers, it's not YouTube views. I don't care about most of that. Well, I need customers, but you know, a lot of that other stuff I think are just vanity based metrics. And so we just ask, you know, have we helped you become a better human? Basically, yes or no. And that's what we have people answer that survey, and we won't stop till we get to 10,000, man. So I'm.
Where you at?
By the end of this year, we will probably hit 5,000.
Okay.
And
sweet. So you'll hit it next year, early then, huh?
That's my goal. So it was 2020 was my original goal, but I think I set that a little too. That was not stretch enough, and so we're gonna go 10K by the end of next year. 1 year
goals, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, that's what I'm going for. And to be honest, I thought this was going to be. Now it is a challenge, but what I said is what I mean by thought it was going to be a challenge in the fact of there's a lot of ego base in having someone telling you that you helped them get better. You know what I mean? So I thought that was going to be very hard to get a yes response from people. But people are fully bought into what we're doing, and they really love it. So they're happy to answer that question, yes, which I guess was my own negative, you know, ego-based view of the question I was asking, that people wouldn't want to answer yes out of their ego, when really it was my ego holding me back there on that particular goal.
You never know until you know, huh?
Right. All right, man. So it's been awesome talking to you so far, but I want to get kind of a bird's eye view of your impact, because you've talked about your mission. We've heard about your different companies and kind of your history and your background, but I like to find out how you would really like to impact the nation if you could. And I do that by asking a question we call the book question. And it's different than the question I'm going to ask at the end, which is, your best advice on becoming a better human. But say there's a nationwide curriculum implemented and the president calls you up and he says, you're responsible for one chapter of the book. So every single child in America will have to read your chapter, be tested on, and pass before they can graduate high school. So given that magnitude, you get to really shape future generations starting at a very low, young level. What would your chapter be about?
So Trump's going to call me up and have me write a chapter on education, huh?
Yep. He wants you.
Well, it's going to be about nutrition, and there's going to be one question for students to answer, which is, does this food that I'm about to eat spoil?
I love it.
And if they say yes, then they can eat it. And then if they say no, then they shouldn't eat it. And then that would be the nutrition chapter of the book.
That is the best litmus test I've ever heard for healthy eating. That's awesome.
If I left this on my counter in 2 weeks from now, can I still eat it? That's
awesome, man. And so this just brings brings it up. You said you were writing a book. What, if you don't mind sharing, if you want to keep it under wraps for now, that's fine. But what's your book about that you're writing, releasing next year?
Yeah, it's fine. It's about ketogenic diet, how to use it, but more importantly, how to test things yourself and individualize nutrition and approach to your own life. And so you have tests in there about like how to determine if something raises your blood sugar, how to know if you can eat dairy or not, how to know like what exactly your own macros should be, how to interpret your own blood work, stuff like that. So
very
pretty
cool.
pumped for that to come out.
Do you have a date? Or
should be mid-April.
Mid-April. Very cool. All right, man. So I'm going to get to the quick fire questions of the show. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. What's the hardest workout you've ever done?
Hardest workout I ever have done was the first time I did Fran.
Nice.
And was during the CrossFit cert when like right after chiro school. I've been doing CrossFit for a little while, but I hadn't done Fran yet. And so it was, I don't know if people are familiar with this workout, but it's a combination of thrusters and pull-ups. And so thrusters is a front squat and do an overhead press, and then pull-ups after that. I mean, I did it right. I did one of the best scores in the cert. So everybody has to do this at the end of the weekend to get your certification. But afterwards, man, I was like, I couldn't breathe for like 30, 40 minutes. And I went outside and I felt like I was going to faint. And like I had this extreme headache, coughing my lungs up. It was freaking brutal, man. But I survived. It's the only thing that matters.
That's awesome. That's, so when I got my level 1, I had to do the same thing. And I'd done the workout before, but I was like really debating. I was like, all right, I'm either going to push it as hard as I possibly can, or I'm not, because I know.
I mean, of course you're going to push as hard as you can with all those people in the room. Come on.
Right. And that's what I ended up falling on. And I had the Fran cough and like all sorts of pain. And I remember that was the first real exercise induced headache I had ever experienced. Like I didn't even know really what that fully was. Like I had heard about them and read about them, but I'd never experienced one, and it was super painful.
Brutal, man, brutal.
All right. In your opinion, what's the best activity for building mental toughness?
I'm going to tie this back to, I'd say daily meditation and like consistency in stuff like that is the biggest thing. Because I mean, consistency in routine and things like that, where it seems unnecessary, but it has a huge effect, I think trickles to the rest of your life. And so this quote that I really like is, how you do anything is how you do everything. Mm-hmm. And so I think that if you're doing things like that, the small things that matter every day, that leads to mental toughness over the long term. And to be able to handle resiliency is super critical in my opinion.
All right. If you could only have one piece of equipment to train with for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I would say an able body or a flat floor. So I could do gymnastic stuff since that's what I'm training right now.
Awesome. All right, man. The question of the show, what's the best advice you have for becoming a better human? This is 100% open-ended. Yeah,
I'm going to have to say 100% eat real food. Like it just impacts everything. It impacts your reality as a human being. Like every neurotransmitter and the makeup of your brain is made from the food you eat. It impacts like how you operate in the world and how you act with other people and to other people. It is the most important thing, like bar none. And if you're not eating real food, you're going to have a shitty experience. And that's just the way life is. I mean, look at how, I could rant for hours about sugar and how it's destroying just minds of people, not even like physical obesity, but mental obesity. I think that to be a better human, you have to eat real things and fuel your body. Like you're 100% made up of the things that you eat. Like you can't make new cells and you can't be a human without eating things. And so if you don't eat things that are good and good for you, then you're going to be a terrible human being. That's just the way it is. And so I think eating real food, 100%.
Awesome, man. I love that answer. All right. What is the best place for people to learn more about you and what you're doing? I know we've mentioned a lot of resources, and I'll link to all of them in the show notes, but where would you want people to go to check you out?
Yeah, so I'd say personal stuff. I'm most engaging with people on my Instagram, which is just Dr Anthony Gustin. And then perfectketo.com, equipfoods.com, and then dranthonygustin.com as well, are just places that I put a lot of information and we have a lot of stuff. And then also Health Fit Biz, HealthFitb, and then movementproviders.com are the two projects that Ryan and I have together.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Gustin, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for your time today.
Appreciate it, man.
Losers always whine about their best.